recently made a batch of roads for my medieval wargaming. These are specifically for use with 6mm wargaming, but you can scale this up and down depending on what scale you want to be playing with. And I posted some pictures on Twitter and so on, and a couple of people actually asked if I would do a tutorial video. I'd used most of the materials to make this project, but I've got just enough to do a very brief tutorial to show you how I've made these types of roads. They're felt based, flexible, and as I say, you can increase the size or decrease it depending on what scale you want to make. Relatively easy, and I think they look pretty good. So this is literally all the material I have left. I've used all of my wall felt that I had. I'm going to try and get some more of this stuff because this works really well. And the reason I've gone for this is because I have a fleece battle mat, and this stuff acts like, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember fuzzy felt. It grips really well on a cloth mat, particularly on the fleece mat that I've got, so it doesn't move around. It does on a slippery plastic surface like this, but on a felt mat it grips really well, just like a piece of fuzzy felt. If you don't know what fuzzy felt is, look it up. A great toy from when I was a kid, and I haven't seen it in shops for donkey's years, but that's where the idea basically came from. So the first stage for me was marking out the roads that I wanted, and I just used a ruler and a marker pen, whatever works on here, because it's going to get painted anyway, so it doesn't matter. Although I've been mucking around here and I made a bit of a mess with me drawing, it doesn't matter because I'm going to paint over it, but it's just so you can fit everything in. Now I've just used a sharp pair of scissors. The original batch, because it was so big, I actually borrowed my wife's dressmaking scissors. Worked ideal with this stuff. Nice straight cuts, no frayed edges or anything like that. And this is relatively easy to, this is only felt, so it's relatively easy to cut. And then I'm going to make because this is literally all the material I've got left, I'm going to make a short section, because you always need short sections, and a small T-junction, but with for a narrower track to come off of the main road. At some point when I get some more material, I'm going to make some track of this width, so it's slightly narrower. And as you know from the other version, the ones that I've completed, there will be a grass verge around the edge. So although this particular piece of material is about just over an inch, or about 3 centimetres wide, the actual road area when you take off the verge is about 2 centimetres wide, and that for me is ideal for medieval road for 6mm projects. So the first step is just to cut it. As I say, I'm just using a regular pair of scissors. It does work better if you can get your hands on some proper dressmaking scissors. It cuts a lot better through the material, but as you can see, these cheap scissors that I'm using still do the job. It's just a little bit harder to get a nice straight cut. You can see it's struggling a little. This wool felt, I got this as an offcut. I bought it, I can't remember how much I paid for it. I think I got like a metre square, and it was literally an offcut that was being sold. Does the job really well, because it's wool felt, it does grip a bit more than the synthetic stuff that you can get from craft stores. But that would work as well, but I find that this is just a little bit fuzzier and therefore works just a little bit better than the synthetic felt that you can buy for craft stores. So I made a bit of a hash of that particular section, but as you can see, I'm not cutting it very well. There you go. So I've just got two very small sections that I'll paint and show you the basic method for how I made the larger sections. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint the top surface of this felt. Now, I have had people ask me, why don't you just use brown felt? But the point is the painting actually gives this a little bit more stability to work on later and to adhere the static grass and flock to. but also enables me to add a little bit of texture other than the fibrous texture of this. What I've done is I've made a paste up, and this is, you can use whatever you like, but this is some basic, real simple, cheap acrylic art paint that I got from the range. Actually, I got this from the Works. When I bought it, I think it was only about £1.50 a tube. You can get it, it's a lot more expensive in some shops, so look around because you can get quite large. I mean, this is a 200ml pot of paint. I've used the burnt umber. It's a really good basic brown, does the job for me. And then I've mixed it with a bit of this dark earth from Coat d'Arms. Now this is a sort of a paste rather than a paint. It's a textured paint, but it was a little bit too much texture. There's sort of like a very fine grit inside this. So what I did was I took probably to proportions roughly 2 parts of this and 1 part of this, mixed it in this pot, added some water to add a little bit of, made it a little bit more flowy, if that's a word, and that gives me the right sort of, as you can see, a sort of flowing texture, but it's still gritty. So when it goes on and dries, you've got that sandy type surface, which is good for the dry brushing side of it. It's absorbent enough, with the adding the water makes it absorbent enough that it adheres to the surface of the felt really well, but it doesn't soak all the way through. So to show you an example, there's one that I've painted. You can see the sandy type surface that you've ended up with because of the grit from this material, but it hasn't soaked all the way through the felt. So what you're left with underneath is that nice grippy fuzzy felt that you want, that's going to stick to the material that you're going to be making, your game mat is made out of, but you've got a nice well bonded surface. The paint and that texture is well bonded to the surface of the felt on the other side, so it's good for adding in the grass and the texture. So I put this on. As you can see, it's fairly thick, because the acrylic that I've been using is very thick. You can actually dilute that art acrylic really quite a lot if you're going to use it on, you know, solid projects, like I've used it on hills, on styrofoam hills, and on high density foam hills that I've made. And you can dilute it quite a lot, and it still keeps its pigment density is very good, so you can dilute it quite a lot. In this case, I'm still keeping it relatively thick. I have added some water, but as you can see, the grit from the Coat d'Arms textured paint, or any other texture paint that you wanted to add for that matter, it means it's got a nice gritty surface, which will be really good when it comes to dry brushing these a little bit later on. So this is really simple. This is one of those stages where you want to leave it to dry for a few hours. You know, in my case, I left it overnight because I'd done a whole batch in one go, and so I wanted to make sure all of it was dry. And that, it's simple as that. It goes on nice and thick, and what you should be left with when it's dry is a good base from which to do a bit of dry brushing, and then you just add in the grass and other vegetation that you want to add as you verge for the river. Don't worry too much about the edges, because the edges are going to be green, so they're going to match my games table surface anyway. So the next step is to dry brush the middle of the road, just with a very light colour, just to show up the texture. And I used a simple tester pot of emulsion. I've used this for other projects. What's this? Burnt sugar. I mean, whatever colour suits you. But this has done the job fine. Rather than wasting lots of more expensive model paint, so literally just a little bit. Let's move this over here. Just a dab, as usual. Rub off as much as you can, and very light dry brush, very gentle down the middle mostly. Same with that bit. Just brings out the texture of that texture paint that we mixed up there earlier. just to show a little bit of texture to the road. And as I say, you know, the whole thing is still very flexible, but without soaking through the felt. So that's it. That's really all we need. Just a little bit of lightness to show off the texture of the road. Simple. So while these two are drying, I just want to talk to you about the glue that I've been using. This is WWS's basing glue. I got this when I bought one of their static grass applicators, and actually the best thing in the parcel was the basing glue itself. This is some of the best glue I've used for any of my terrain projects. There may be other brands out there that do similar, but I really like this. This is it's as more adhesive than what normal PVA, which I've used on other projects, and more to the point, it stays, for want of a better phrase, rubbery. It's flexible even after it's set, and it forms a really good bond between the turf or the static grass and the model that you're applying it to. So when I put the grass verges on this, it will hold that on really well. It dries relatively quickly, and as I say, it stays flexible, so which is ideal for what I want with felt material roads that I want, and streams that I've made in the past, and fields that I've made in the past, because I want them to be just a little bit flexible for use across varied terrain. So this is my particular recommendation, entirely my own. I've bought this myself, and from personal use, I can highly recommend it. So I've added a little bit of the basing glue along the very edges to create this grass verge, and just dipped it into my pre-mixed mix of turf, which is light and dark with some flecks of colour in for flowers and stuff, and then just a few little streaks across the road just to show, areas where grass has grown. It's an ill-maintained medieval road, and then the finishing touch literally is just adding some grass just to break up the solid outline of the turf that I've used. It just means that, on my mat, which has got a lot of light coloured patterning on it, it just means it will blend in a little bit better. So just a few dabs along here, and maybe a little bit in the grass. And again, I'm just going to dab that in the grass, shake off the excess, and that's it. Just leave that to dry, and that's basically the technique that I've used. I'll give it another, when it's dried, I'll give it another good shake to get any of the little bits of grass that's adhering just through static, but it'll only stick to the areas where I've added the grass in. And so, I've got myself another little section there. I've made about 13 or 14 foot, which is ample for what I need. I actually only need 6 foot for the plan I'm working on, but obviously I'll make more so that I can use it in future games. But there you go, it's nice and easy. This basing glue really does do the trick, and as I say, it remains flexible, so it means that the grass, the road section, or the streams as I made last week, just remain flexible. You can mould them over terrain if you've got things underneath your mat to create hills and so on. You can flex it slightly, and of course, being felt, it will stick down and adhere quite well. So that's it. That's basically the method. I mean, these need, like I say, they need a bit of a shake to clear off any excess static grass once they're fully dried, but that's it. They're nice and easy, really quick, really. I did all of my other road sections in under a day, I painted them the night before, left them overnight to dry, and then all of the other work took less than a day. And like I say, I've made about probably 12, 13, maybe 14 foot of road and different sections, and I'm going to do some narrower ones to match up with this sort of trackway, and I'll do them a little bit more, some curved sections and things like that. But before I can do that, I need to get some more felt, because I've used all of the material now, even the very last scraps on this. So there you go, very quick and easy tutorial just to show you how I've done these quick and simple roads. I mean, you can probably buy better commercial versions, but for something that you can do yourself in an afternoon with relatively little skills, I don't think that's a bad little project to do.